Good morning and welcome back to the podcast. I have had a bunch of ideas land for me with podcast episodes that I am going to record. So today is about how releasing in my unique way using the release process actually helps you with your communication. But before I dive into that, because I always like to let you know what's going on behind the scenes, is that when I started this podcast back in 2020, with the vision simply to share a message because it was during the pandemic and I had no idea what was going to happen with our lives if we were still going to be living. And I just remember thinking, well, is my soul going to ascend? Have I actually lived out my purpose? And the answer was no. So that is when I actually just got over caring what people thought about what I had to share in the world of emotions. And I remember when I launched my podcast, I had learned about batching and I batched the first 3 months of my podcast. And it was so great. And I was managing all of it at the time. And I committed to myself that I was going to release an episode a week. Now, that's 2020, we're 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 2026. I can't believe I am 6 years in. It felt really cool when I could say that my business was successful 1, 2 years in. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I am 6 years in. And to be honest, I flaked off being so consistent. I went every fortnight, and then I think in 2025, I just recorded whenever I wanted. And I think there's only a small handful of podcasts. And what I've learned about myself over the years, doing many personality profiles, not handing myself over to the personality profiles, is really accepting how I operate. And one of those elements is that when the energy hits, when the idea hits, it feels so strong that I'm not going to forget it, that I think I'll do this later. But what I have learnt over and over and over and again, a repeating pattern for me, is, Jen, you've got to listen. When the energy hits, just act on it in that moment in time, which might mean I'm going to go ahead and record 4 or 5 podcasts right now. And that means that I'm going to get back into the batching because I know that structure, that discipline actually creates me a lot of freedom. And I do have a wonderful helper helping me put the podcast out there, even though it's not that hard, if ever you're thinking about starting a podcast. But here I am. I woke up a couple of days ago with some ideas. I didn't record them. I lost the mojo, didn't know how to speak about it. And so nothing got recorded. And then this morning I woke up in my lucid state of dreaming. And that's going to be another podcast. And thought, I just have to come down here and record. So here I am. If you love hearing what I've been sharing on the podcast, I would really love if you could rate and review the podcast. And let's get into sharing about how releasing using the release process to process your emotions actually helps you with your real life conversation. Okay, so first of all, something that I notice with the work that I do with people is that they're often not getting what they want in life, what they want, what they need, or what they desire. And in my work, we always take responsibility for how is it that I can change? Not that someone outside of you needs to change their behavior, their way of being, for you to get what you want. Now, sometimes we can get really triggered by people who have what we want because we can see it's possible for them, but we feel like we're missing something in ourselves. And I will say there is something missing. And so I teach people to process their emotions. And most of the time people come into my world because they have some sort of chronic illness, some sort of complex health issue, or maybe it's just this repeating pattern on the energetic level in other facets of their life. And they realize that their emotions might actually be having an influence on what is happening in their world. And so I get people to process their emotions by going back to events and experiences where the emotions weren't actually expressed or felt at the time. And I use what's called the release process. It's a 4-step process, but 3 parts of it make up a verbal dialogue. So it's spoken out loud. And there is a specific structure that people need to follow to make sure that they can actually go back to the event safely, that they can actually bring up the emotions that weren't expressed at the time and sit in maybe what is the discomfort of what they haven't felt for a long time. And that's how they process their emotions. But it's actually through this verbal dialogue that when I see people do their process and share it with me, usually in the form of a transcription if you were in one of my groups, it's like I get so much insight into their world, and I can see exactly why they are presenting with the issues they are presenting with, not just on a physical level, but why on an energetic level are they attracting the same challenges, which are actually opportunities in disguise and lessons in disguise, and why they are just simply experiencing what they are experiencing. Okay, so I can tell why someone is not getting what they want, need, or desire in their life. And the first thing that the release process reveals is that usually they can't ask for what they need. They're so concerned about the other person. They feel so selfish, so guilty in asking what they need. And the release process is done when you're on your own. You're not even having to speak to a person. And then in another part of the release process, there is a part that's really focused on receiving. Okay, and a lot of people don't realize this until they're actually engaging with me and I've got my eyes on their releases and I'm giving them feedback. This is where I see the sneaky human just come in and bypass stuff and never actually, just in this release process, allow themselves to feel and experience and hear what they actually needed back in that point in time. So the release process really highlights to me why someone is not able to receive what they need, want, or desire in their life. The first thing is usually they can't even ask for it, they can't even articulate it, it feels that uncomfortable or that foreign or that new. And the second piece is that they actually have issues receiving, so they're putting up the block. Now, I started this podcast saying, how does releasing and processing your emotions actually help you with your communication? Okay. So people then get worried that if I'm going to be processing my emotions, you're going to expect me to have all of these conversations with people that I would rather not interact with. And what I'm going to say to that is if that comes up for you, maybe if there is a trigger there, it is because there is something deeper for you to work on. Either you've just have to get into processing your emotions and truly come to a grounded decision as to whether or not that is a good idea or not. Or it may be that you actually do need to engage yourself in what I call an uncomfortable conversation. You've got to be able to lead yourself in a way and present yourself in a way and hold and listen and speak in a way that you haven't for a long time or in a way that you never have before. Okay, but that's the next piece. So much of the time we jump to that next piece before we've even done the foundation of actually just processing your emotions so that the next step can actually reveal itself. So yes, there may be a case that actually a deeper level of healing will be available if you have the conversation. But first of all, when you're doing release processing in my unique way, following the structure, following the process, you are doing it in your own private space. You are literally just speaking out loud and you are getting used to the vibration and the frequency of your voice. You're getting used to the discomfort, which starts to become comfortable, then more and more you hear your voice and hear yourself speak in this way. Okay, so you really do need some consistency, and a lot of the time, release processes on a variety of things allows you this opportunity to actually get comfortable in communicating in this new way, to actually just hear and feel the vibration and frequency of these words before you take it into an actual conversation. The other thing that release processing helps is to clear that energy, because actually it doesn't matter if we even speak to people, we can feel their energy. So if you can get out as much of the negative type feelings, which are just normal, but the negative states, or just clear your emotional cup, that means that you're going to be able to stay in the conversation and communicate a lot clearer, in the sense that you'll actually have capacity to listen to that person, to be able to hear them. Okay, so many people come into this work and say, I just don't have capacity for anyone else's stuff and their stories, and people just dump on me. And there is a point where you can have the capacity to truly listen to someone and not shut down, not run away, and actually make the whole issue worse. Okay. You can get to the point of having capacity where you can listen to someone and realize they don't need to be fixed. They don't need your solutions. It is not your responsibility. So you have a better capacity and power to be able to listen to people, which is really healing. And when you think about it, when you're going to communicate what you want, what you need, and what you desire, you actually want that person to be able to listen to you. Okay. Now, just a little caveat here is that sometimes the power in communicating what you need, want, and desire is that, well, that's the power in itself. Okay. It's not about manipulating that person to be able to give you what you want, because sometimes the answer is going to be a no. But the fact that you've had the courage to speak it out loud, I know that in some shape, way, or form, or another person or another way, you're going to be able to receive that. So again, we just set such high expectations on ourselves that if I do this work, if I have this conversation, it means that I'm going to get the thing that I want. Now, I do believe that processing your emotions is going to help you attract the right people into your life to be able to give you what you want. But also, this is where we've got to take responsibility to use our voice and make it simple. How is it that I can communicate what it is I want? Make it easy for the person. Don't make them try and mind read you or work it out themselves. Just shortcut it and ask for what you want. And if that person can't give it to you, don't give up there. Ask the next person. Put it out there. People want you to be able to live the life you want, to have what you need, want, and desire in life, but you've got to learn to speak up about it. Now, just to bring in a story, this is back in the day when I worked in retail and pharmacy. This is what I did in high school. After I was a nail technician at 14, I moved into pharmacy and I absolutely loved it. I became a dispensary technician. I worked through school at a friend's family pharmacy and then into uni at a variety of pharmacies. And we still love going into pharmacies and just checking them out, okay? But it is just also so far away from the work that I do right now. Maybe that's another episode, just like working behind the scenes and seeing the amount of medications people took. But I was in retail, I was in customer service. And this is where I say words are important, but also your energy. There were just people that you're like, I'm going to give you the level of service. Okay, you're probably not going to feel that you're getting any less or any more, but I don't get a really good vibe from you. And that doesn't make me want to give more to you, because either you're not being clear on what you want or you're just kind of blocking that receiving energy. So it's like, yep, I'm going to serve you, I'm going to give you great service, but you're not going to get anything more from me. And then there are the people that either they just so beautifully ask for the support or what they need, want, and desire, or they just have this really amazing energy from them that they get a great level of service, plus they get so much more. And so it was, I remember working in this pharmacy in Richmond, in Melbourne, Australia. This very clear interaction that I had with someone, and he had to come and pick up his medication. And you know how sometimes people have these names? Well, for me, I hear people's names and they're really clear. And other times you're just like, what the hell have they said? And you think that you've got enough of their name that you can just go out the back and you can have a look at what is on the shelf ready to be picked up and work it out. And I could not find this guy's stuff. And of course, the pharmacist is like, what's this guy's name? I'm like, he said it like 3 times. I don't want to ask him again. Like, do I get him to write it down? And anyway, we couldn't find it. I had to ask again. He was getting real shirty with me, and his wife was there as well. And anyway, we found the medication. I was at the cashier And I said, look, I'm really sorry about that. I just didn't catch your name very clearly. And his wife walked up. She was like a ball of energy. She was really lovely. And she picked up that he was grumpy. And she's like, what's up? And he mumbled something. And I'm like, well, she knows him better. She understands what he said. And then I loved it. She just kind of called him out. She said, oh, are you not speaking up and are you not enunciating properly so that the girl can understand, the lady can understand how to help you? I was like, that is so right. Like, I did not want to give him anything extra. Okay. I'm going to get your medication. I'm going to ring it up and I'm going to pop it in a bag. I'm going to say, have a good night. But the lady, if I was going to serve her, she just made it lighthearted. She called out what was really obvious there that he wasn't taking responsibility for as to why he wasn't getting his medication because he couldn't even say his name clear enough for me to be able to understand. He just expected me to get it. But I wanted to give her more. And so that has actually played into my life being a client or a patient myself, or even just in unpaid environments where I'm surrounded with people. I'm always asking myself, how can I take responsibility for my energy and my communication here where people just want to give more to me? Okay. Because I'm ready to receive it, because I'm asking the right questions, because I'm actually being clear. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Sometimes I get a little bit concerned that my stories are not the best representation of something that I'm trying to articulate in the emotional world. So that's why I love for you to get in touch with me and let me know, how did this podcast actually land? If you get in touch with me on my personal Facebook or Instagram, it will be me actually responding to you and probably saying, thank you. Thank you for letting me know. I can keep on going with these stories. So, where did we start? Well, started telling you about my batching experience with this podcast and all the great ideas that I've come up with. And hopefully you can feel the energy of that. This is about how does releasing, not just releasing your emotions, but using my unique release process, a structure and process that's got 4 steps and 3 parts to it, is a verbal dialogue. How does using the release process actually help you with your day-to-day communication? Okay. And so for me, it's when I get my eyes on someone's release process, I can call it out for them. I can support you and tell you exactly why you're not getting stuff when you're actually communicating in real life. Because if this is happening in a release, it is probably happening in your real life conversations. It also helps to be able to just clear your energy because we feel energy before we feel words, okay? So that you can be able to listen to someone clearer, but also you can stay grounded in the conversation and you can hold yourself in this new way of communicating and speaking that isn't normal for you, okay? If you have continually been asking for what you want and you're not receiving it, ask yourself what has got to change. And sometimes you can't see that, which is why I'm such an advocate for support on this emotional processing, releasing journey. All right. The other piece that is useful, why we release before we go into communication, is this the third piece? I'm not too sure. It's one of the elements, is that you simply just get used to hearing your voice and putting the vibration and frequency out there. So you're doing it before you're even having a conversation with a person, putting the vibration and frequency out there. And then you're doing it on another level when you're actually having the conversation with the person. Even if they cannot give you what you need, want, and desire, let go of that expectation. Don't just shut yourself down because it didn't work. Keep on going. Keep on asking. Okay, so my doggies are getting vocal. My dogs are getting vocal in the background. I'm like, damn it, I'm at the end of the episode. Hey, Twiki, just hush for a little bit. Okay, so I don't edit these episodes. I'm at the end of this one. If you know that communication is something that you've got to work on, this is not about learning communication skills first. It is about doing the base level, learning how to just simply process your emotions, knowing now that it can help you with your communication. I have helped and supported hundreds of people navigate difficult conversations that have moved them forwards, that has allowed themselves to lead in a different way, because the reality is that something's got to change if you want your reality to change. And that means putting yourself in conversations that you probably haven't been used to, that are uncomfortable to begin with, but they get easier as you do more of it, as you stay more consistent. And then there'll be another level of conversation, but don't need to scare you off with that. So anything is possible. And just to add to that, walking the path with people where I'll say, you know what, the next level of healing for you is really to have this conversation. It's really fascinating how their body responds, sometimes in a form of sickness or a health issue flaring up. That doesn't necessarily mean that this isn't out of alignment. This means there's a little bit more work to do. Let's stretch your capacity, expand it a little bit more. Sit in that conversation. Your nervous system is going to be heightened a little bit, but not to the point where you run. And the release process is so magical because when you have practiced receiving what you want, quite often, even if you don't expect to ever hear it from that person, people have said to me over and over again, Jen, they said to me everything that I want, need, and desire, plus more. Okay. Hopefully, I'm going to get someone on the podcast to actually interview about this so that you can hear the emotion behind it, the energy behind it. If you want to learn the release process with support, this is where I teach it and guide you and support you and have my eyes on your releases and tell you about the sneaky human bypasses in release. This is my signature program where I teach you how to process your emotions by processing events and experiences in your life so that you can decipher the message from this past experience and actually get unstuck, come to peace with your past and move forwards, and absolutely be able to open yourself to the possibility of activating healing on a physical, physiological, and an emotional level. So I will pop the link in the show notes and you can check if enrollment is open. It opens and closes every now and then. Otherwise, get on the wait list. And I hope to walk this journey with you. It is incredibly fascinating. Thanks for listening. And remember, if you find any of these podcasts beneficial, I would really appreciate if you can rate and review so that other people like you can find it and change their lives. And also, if you want, get in touch with me on my social media, Instagram, my personal Facebook, and I will be the one that actually responds to you. Okay, thanks again for listening.